Hey there, Jeannie here. Today I'm sharing a scene changing card using a Strawberry Jude stamp set called Camping with Bear and Bunny. I have these cut out and they're ready to color. Using my go-to Spectrum Noir markers, I'll color up all the images I plan to use for this card. For a couple of the images, like the rock and the wooden sign, I took the darker shade and put it down where I wanted it, and then with the lighter shade and the broad tip of the marker, colored it in really quickly. It's kind of my go-to cheating when I want to color easily. For the rest of the images, I colored like I normally do, using 2 to 3 markers starting with the darkest to the lightest. Since I already cut these out, I'm just using that white piece of paper so the marker doesn't get all over my cutting mat. These images are perfect for creating a camping scene. I was surprised I was able to fit so many different images onto the card, but they do end up being the perfect size, and I think I fit almost every image from the stamp set onto this card. So once I finish coloring, I'll go ahead and lay out the scene that I had imagined in my head, and I'll actually use my cell phone to take a picture so I remember exactly how I have everything laid out and how I want it to look. Using an A2 piece of paper, I'll mark off 1/2 inch on the left-hand side and the top of the card, and this is where the foam tape will go later on. So I'm picking out a circle that fits perfectly in that little space. This will be the circle that spins and changes the scene of the card. Using distressings, I'll go ahead and create my scene. When doing this, I had envisioned a night to daytime scene, so I needed colors that blended well together and could make for an easy transition. For these colors, I used chipped sapphire, broken china, shaded lilac, salty ocean, and a little bit of black soot. I also wanted an extra element of stars in the sky for the nighttime because the daytime seemed so plain already. So I have a W+9 starry background die that I used for the nighttime portion of the circle. So I'll only put it halfway on the circle. Once that's done, I'll poke out all the little stars, and this die actually embosses some stars on there too, so it looks pretty cool. So for the front of the card, I picked out a circle die that was smaller than the one I had just inked up. For the smaller circle, I'll draw a line where the halfway point is and mark where the brad will go. For the front of the card, I place it halfway on my cutting platform, so I'll only cut half of the circle. I just don't want the full circle here. To be clear, the brad will go through the front of the card where the center of the scene circle is. So I'll use my paper trimmer to cut the half circle portion off, and I'll poke a hole in the middle of the scene circle and where I had marked off for the front of the card. So I noticed that the die left a little bit of a mark, so I used a Teflon bone folder to even it out, and I'll erase all the marks that I made. I'll poke the holes for where the brads will go, and while playing with the spinning portion, I realized that I poked the hole incorrectly on the scene circle. So I go back and I fix it, and you want the scene to fill up the entire half circle. And I'll also trim the front of the card on the right hand side 1/4 inch so there's room to move the spinner. For the front of the card, I chose some green watercolor paper from My Favorite Things and I used it as grass. So I'll measure it out to fit underneath the half circle, and I use a die to cut out the hilltop. Once that's done, I'll use my ATG gun to glue it down, and I'll poke the brad through it. So once everything's assembled, I'll move on to my images. I'll pull out my Xyron sticker maker to add adhesive to the back of the images. It just makes it easier for me to stick these images down to the front of the card. And I'll make sure that the adhesive is transferred to the images by burnishing them with my bone folder and running it around the edges of my images. I'll also pull out my phone to see how I had arranged the scene to look like at the start. And I'll use an adhesive remover to remove any adhesive to the parts of the bear and bunny that isn't going to lay on the front of the card. I just don't want it sticking to the spinning circle or the part where the bunny lays over the brad. So I want to make sure everything is moving freely. So I'll go ahead and test it out by spinning the card to make sure nothing sticks to it. Once that's done, I'll flip it over and it's time to add the foam tape. I just want to add a little dimension to the card so it has room to move. So I'll add foam tape to the top and bottom of the card and a thinner piece on the side of the card. So for an extra touch, I'll take out a light colored marker to add shadow under all the images. I start out with like a light green and then I actually go back in with a light gray to dull it out a bit. It was a little too bright for my liking. And it's not too obvious, but it does add a little dimension to it and it creates that space that you're looking at a campsite and there's bunnies on top of a hillside. For the card base, I actually choose to add a yellow cardstock to the card because when you spin it, you'll see the stars and they'll be yellow. And I thought that the white looked too boring since the top portion of the card was already white too. So that's the card for today. I hope you like it. It was something I had in my head for a while, even before I got the stamp set, and this fit perfectly. And you'll notice that I left the wooden sign blank, and I figured I'd keep it like that so when I was ready to give this card away, I could add a sentiment to match. So thanks for watching today's card. I hope you enjoyed it. Have a great day. Bye.